How do you deal with a spouse who doesn't fulfill their promises? So they promise something, they tell you they're going to do it, but they don't. How do you deal with that? With love. So your spouse does not fulfill their promises. So they could say something like, you know what, we're going to go on a date tomorrow evening. And number one, they forget about it. So they don't show up for the date, even though you're married. And they just show up at home and they don't even say, sorry, I couldn't show up. Or they can say something like, you know what, tomorrow I'm going to fix lunch for you. I'm going to bring lunch to your workplace for you to. So don't worry about taking lunch with you. I'll pass by and bring lunch. And they don't do it, and they don't bother to say, you know what, I'm so sorry. I couldn't leave my work as I planned to bring lunch for you. What do you do to handle this using the love workout method? The love workout method, or love as a whole, what I do try to share is, when we're in any relationship, you must take responsibility for your own joy, and that is your responsibility and not the responsibility of another person. In other words, you cannot expect another person to make you more joyful or more peaceful. You choose to do that, and if you release that to another person, then you are doing yourself a disservice. So that's the concept. And so if the question here now is, how do I do that when I have a spouse who keeps promising stuff and they're not doing it? And so I am hopeful that they're going to do something and they don't do it. I'll start by saying, before we solve a problem, we need to find out what the problem really is. What is the real problem? We see the symptom of the problem. The symptom of the problem is that this person is making promises that they are not fulfilling. But what is the real problem? Is it that they're forgetting, or they are making those promises because someone forced them to make them? So there are those are two different things. So if, for example, you get on my case and you say, you've never taken me out, why are you not taking me out? I want you to take me out. And I say, okay, I'll take you out tomorrow. It didn't come from my heart. The chances that I would, the moment you let me go, maybe I was just thinking of something in my mind or my heart that I was doing, and I wanted you to let me go, and I say, you know what, I'll take you out tomorrow. It can fly out of my mind immediately. So we need to find out what the real problem is. If it is that all these promises that get broken are promises that were cajoled out of them, then we have a different problem. We're going to have to solve it differently. But if it is that they volunteer, you are on your own, and someone says, you know what, isn't it your birthday tomorrow? You say, yes, it's my birthday tomorrow. I'm taking you out. Or, don't worry, tomorrow, don't take any lunch. Since it's your birthday, I'm going to come to your office, and I'm going to come with food, and we're going to have lunch. And then they didn't show up. So that's a different problem. We need to deal with them differently. I'm going to assume that you were cajoling them. You need to take the garbage out. You need to take the garbage out. Okay, I'm going to take it out at 5 o'clock. And they don't. I'm going to assume that that's the case here. You are the one that made them, you put them in a corner, and they had to make a promise, and then they failed on that promise. If that is the case, we're going to start with that one. Now, if we want to deal with that, the first thing we have to look at is, what are those things that you're making them promise? Now take a look at that, because there's an underlying problem there. The real problem is not that they're not fulfilling their promise. The real problem is that they're not engaging in the communication with you. They're not engaging in their when they're making promises to you. They're not putting, their minds are not there. And so we need to deal with that situation more. Maybe the situation would be then, I'm not able to get them to communicate and engage with me properly. We're going to go deeper and say, why? Why is it that you're not able to engage with them properly? There's nothing wrong with asking the question. I notice that when I'm talking with you, sometimes you're busy What's going on? How can I engage with you better? There's nothing wrong with asking that question. There's nothing wrong in trying to figure that out yourself. I notice that when I talk to my spouse or my husband, when they are busy, they make all these promises and never fulfill them. So I'm going to solve that problem, number one, by not forcing them to make promises. Rather, I would let them come up with their own things, what they want to do. All right. Now, once you know that the problem is a different problem, we can solve it in a different way, right? Let's assume now that they are the one making promises, and still they're failing in those promises. Then that comes to the general situation, which is they say what they want to do, raise your hope, and they dash it. And if they've done that 2 or 3 times, you can understand that it's a pattern. It's a pattern, and if it's a pattern and they're already used to that behavior, which is negative to you and negative to them, you can then deal with that as a problem. Now, not as a problem to fight them, because they are not intentionally trying to sabotage their lives and your life. They are doing that because they've learned a bad habit that needs to be corrected, but they have to choose to correct that. No one changes their habit because somebody nagged them about it. The nagging, if it ever works, only opens their eyes or enlightens them to see how dangerous it is to themselves and to others, and then they have to make up their minds to change that habit. So a lot of people that I work with always struggle with this because they assume that there's a written code somewhere, that once you're married, you must do things to please me, and if not, the gods of marriage will beat the spouse on the head. So they have this concept that the gods of marriage will beat their spouse on the head, and their spouse will now fall in line. But as they've been married for a while, they figure out that there's no gods of marriage anywhere, and there's no police of marriage anywhere. It's going to arrest anyone, and people get to do things that don't please you in the marriage, not because they intentionally want to sabotage, but because that's the way they got doing stuff. And you have a choice. You have a choice. You can either leave the marriage, and most people will not leave the marriage because of that, because as much as the guy has problems or the wife has problems with 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 issues, they are also good in the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 other issues. When an adult, has a challenge or a problem or a habit, whatever it is that is in their life that's not aligned properly, that's not working well, it's not good for them, it's not good for you, it's not good for your family, the best way is to give them the space to make amends. You bring the motivation to make them change, and of course you bring that motivation by articulating the discomfort that you feel, but more importantly, the disadvantage to their own goals, their own lives, how that impacts their lives. And I know sometimes you are not able to think about that. You are so focused on how it frustrates you that you cannot go beyond that and think about how it affects them. But when you are able to pull yourself back and get rid of that, your selfish tendency to see, and I'm not saying that in a negative way, I'm saying that we all are selfish in our first approach, but we must pull back from that selfish approach and look at what is it that this behavior, what is it doing to them that is negative? And think, if you can go even further and think, why did they come up with this behavior? It must be to protect themselves or to get something that was beneficial at a time, but now it's not. It's now destructive. It is once we know that you as a spouse can become the trigger to help them make up their mind to change that habit. So how do you deal with a person who never fulfills their promises? You take it as this is who they are and stop depending on their promises. Like, that's if they make those promises by themselves. So you need to first acknowledge that you're not the one forcing them to say stuff and then they say it absent-mindedly. Now, when they make promises by themselves and they're not fulfilling that, there's a bad habit that they've got there, and you need to then draw their attention to it. But before you can do that, which you cannot control whether they change or not, you need to take care of your own self, take care of your own mind. And how do you do that? You recognize that, okay, when my husband promises to do anything, I can't depend on it, because they will forget, or they just say those things to make me feel good. But when another person comes around, they may do some other things and forget that they promised me. And you live your life with that understanding. Someone says, oh my goodness, I can't do that. I can't do that. How can you imagine a person getting married to a person that you cannot believe what they say? I understand your complaint, and it's a legitimate one. But you need to recognize that you have a few choices here. One choice is to make up your mind that I cannot do this. This is a deal breaker. I need to leave this marriage right away. It's a choice. You have that choice. You also have a choice to say, you know what, I'm going to continue to complain about this for the rest of my life and make myself miserable, make my spouse miserable, all the people around us miserable. It's ingrained in our way of thinking that if I nag this person long enough, if I trouble them long enough, I'm going to change them to the way I want them to be, and I'm going to be happy about it. No one is happy by that. I think it's not right. I think it's a very frustrating way of living, but a lot of people do that. And my prayer today is that if you are one of those who have been doing that, you stop it right away. Stop it today. And choose to live your life with the understanding that what I've got in the package is what I've got. They can change, but someone has to inspire them and show them more of the reasons why. Not by nagging, not by complaining, not by trying to force or cajole, but rather to inspire. I hope this has helped you. And if you want to know more about this, I have a workshop that is coming up. We're going to be doing a training. It's a 3 hours workshop where you and your spouse can go through the training with exercises and interactions that will help you to improve your communications, improve the way you handle conflicts, and improve your intimacy. So those are the 3 things we aim to achieve at that workshop. It's free. So if you want to be part of that, just go to perfectloveworkshop.com. It's a Saturday, April 5th. Perfectloveworkshop.com, and you can be a part of that. All right. The Lord bless you. And until we meet again, continue to live like Jesus and make what? Mega impact. God bless you. Bye for now.